So we've talked about one-step equations, whether we needed to add, subtract, multiply, or divide, and I mean one-step inequalities, sorry. Now we're going to solve multi-step inequalities. So you really do solve these just as you would equations. The only exception is when you multiply or divide by a negative number, you must remember to flip the inequality symbol. You can say reverse if you want. Okay. So on number one, we want to get rid of the constant first. So the 6 is attached to the x, we'll deal with it second. We want to add 4 to both sides, so that's the opposite of subtracting 4. Then we have 6 times x, we do the opposite of multiplying by 6, we divide both sides by 6. We get x is less than or equal to 5. Okay, now on number 2, there is a variable on both sides. So what I recommend, it's not required, but what I recommend when that happens is to go ahead and combine the two terms that each have a variable. You can move the 3a over here, the 5 over here, that's your call. I'm going to choose to move the 3a over. I'm just doing that because then I'll have a positive coefficient, but it doesn't actually matter. So I have negative 15 is greater than 4 plus 2a. Okay, so then I need to get rid of this 4, so I'll subtract 4 from both sides. Negative 19 is greater than 2a. And since I ran out of room, I'm going to move this up over here. So negative 19 is greater than 2a. So my last step, since I'm multiplying by 2, I divide both sides by 2. I get negative 19 over 2 is greater than a. Okay, number 3. Basically the similar structure to what we did number 1. We'll subtract 13 from both sides. We get 11y is greater than or equal to negative 14. Then we'll divide both sides by 11. And we get y is greater than or equal to negative 14 over 11. Now just a reminder, we don't have to flip the inequality on this one or on number 2. There were negatives on the other side of the inequality, but we weren't dividing by a negative number. We were dividing both sides by positive 11. So it doesn't matter if this number is positive or negative. It matters if what you're dividing or multiplying by on both sides is negative. Okay, number 4, similar to number 2 in that we have variables on both sides. So I'm going to choose to add the 2n over. Gives me 10n minus 10 less than 6. Then I add 10 to both sides. Gives me 10n less than 16. So sorry, we ran out of room again. We'll divide both sides by 10. So we do get n is less than 16 over 10, but we can, wasn't shifted the right way. But we do need to reduce the fraction. So like negative 14 over 11, negative 19 over 2, those could not be reduced, so it's fine to leave them. But we do need to reduce this. They're both divisible by 2, so we'll get 8/5. Okay, number 5. We'll subtract 1 from both sides first. Gives us x over 7 is greater than negative 7. And then since they're dividing x, the variable, by 7, we'll multiply both sides by 7 and get x is greater than negative 49. Okay, number 6. Whenever you have one giant fraction like this, the first thing you want to do is get rid of that denominator. So we're going to multiply both sides by 2, because that will cancel out with this 2, because 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 12 times 2 is 24. because then at that point, this is a lot simpler version. Looks a whole lot like what we had in number 1 and number 3 at this point. We'll subtract 6 from both sides. And divide both sides by -3. So that gives us x is less than or equal to -6. I made a mistake. I didn't do it on purpose. I wish I could say I did, but I didn't. We divided by a negative number. So what I forgot to do was flip the inequality sign. It should now be x is greater than or equal to -6. So use my forgetfulness to remind you not to forget. When you divide or multiply by a negative number, you do have to flip the inequality sign. Okay. Number 7. We have variables on both sides. I choose to add 8m to both sides. So negative 1m plus 8m is positive 7m. Then we'll subtract 18 from both sides. Gives us negative 21 is less than 7m. So we will divide both sides by 7. And because we're dividing by a positive number, we do not have to flip the inequality sign this time. All right. Number 8, write an inequality and solve each problem. -3 times a number plus 4 is no more than, so it's less than or equal to, the number minus 8. Okay, so -3 times a number, -3n, plus 4, no more than means it can be that big or smaller, which is why we do less than or equal to, the number minus 8. So I'm going to choose to add 3 into both sides. We get 4 is less than or equal to 4n minus 8. Then I will add 8 to both sides. 12 is less than or equal to 4n. Then we divide both sides by 4. And we get 3 is less than or equal to n. Okay, 1/4 of a number. So 1/4 times a number decreased by 3 is at least, so it's greater than or equal to 2. So we'll start by adding 3 to both sides. And then, since this is multiplying by 1/4, we can multiply by the reciprocal of that, which is 4. So the 4's cancel. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So we get n is greater than or equal to 20. Okay, some trickier ones on the back, but you got this. So number 10, we'll start by distributing. So right here, anytime you see distribution being possible, you should take care of it first. So we do treat this as a -2. -2 times 6a is -12a. -2 times -4 is +8. And here, you may not think of it as distributing, but we need to make sure this subtraction applies to both of these. So we have to write it as -4a minus 6. Now, one way you could think about it is distributing is you could think of this as an understood 1 in front. So it's like they're being multiplied by -1, which changes both of their signs. Okay, so now we'll combine the like terms we have on each side individually. So what I mean is just looking at this side, 3a minus 12a is -9a. And then 4 minus 6 is -2. And it's okay if you write -2 minus 4a or -4a minus 2. It's the same either way, so the order doesn't matter there. Okay, I'm going to choose to add 9a to both sides. Gives me 8 is greater than -2 plus 5a. Add 2 to both sides. remind myself to give more room on this page. Oh my goodness. 10 is greater than 5a. And we divide both sides by 5 to complete the picture. 2 is greater than a. Don't worry, they're not all that long. Okay, 11, much quicker. We do need to distribute, but it'll just become 2x plus 6. Subtract 6 from both sides. And then we divide both sides by 2. So x is greater than or equal to 5. Okay. So number 12, let me angle this a little differently. There we go. 12 we need to distribute first, so 3 times d and 3 times 2. And on this side, we do have two like terms we can combine. I'm not dividing, I'm just underlining. 3d minus 2d is 1d. And then we just add 6 over and get that d is greater than 22. Okay, on 13, we need to distribute first. We subtract 2h from both sides because we have variables on both sides, so I recommend we combine those as soon as we can. Add 8 to both sides. That gives us 2h is less than 6. And we divide both sides by 2, and we get h is less than 3. Okay, 14. We do need to distribute this negative through here, so we'll get k minus 17 is less than or equal to negative 17 plus k. So remember, it's just like a negative 1. Negative 1 times 17 is negative 17. Negative 1 times negative k is positive 1k. Okay, so we subtract k from both sides, and whoa, that makes the variables disappear. Let's see what we're left with. Let's see if it makes sense or not. This happened to us with equations. It can also happen with inequalities. So the variables disappeared, and we say negative 17 is less than or equal to negative 17. Well, that's true. It doesn't have to be both of them. It can't be. It just has to be one or the other. And since negative 17 is equal to negative 17, it means we have infinite solutions. You could plug any number you could want to, any number you can imagine, I think is what I was trying to say. And in for k, and this would work every time. Okay, 15, we need to distribute first. 3 times 2y is 6y. 3 times 4 is 12. Negative 2 times y is negative 2y. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And the 10, all alone. So we have 6y minus 2y, that's 4y. Combining like terms right now. Negative 12 minus 2 is negative 14. Then we add 14 to both sides. Four y is greater than 24. We divide both sides by 4. Y is greater than 6. Okay. Here, got to distribute. You may notice the pattern on this side of the page. Negative 2 times b, negative 2 times 1. And I'm going to start by combining the variables. Oh, actually, I'm going to do 2 steps at once. Be careful. Watch me. Okay, so I'm going to add the 3b over. But I'm also going to go ahead and combine this 8 and this 2. So 8 minus 2 is 6. Then negative 2b plus 3b is 1b. I didn't need to cross it out, sorry. And that's all less than 12. So then we subtract 6 from both sides. We get b is less than 6. So again, I did do 2 steps. I went ahead and said 8 minus 2 is 6. And I added 3b to both sides so I could combine the two terms that have variables. Okay, 17. When they talk about multiplying by a sum or multiplying by a difference, that means you're going to have to use parentheses. So these also are going to require distribution once, or distributed property once we write the inequality. So twice the sum, so 2 times parentheses, the sum of a number and 4 is less than 12. Okay, so we can distribute. Actually, I'll go ahead and tell you, this one you don't have to distribute. You could just divide both sides by 2 and avoid that. But since we've been doing the distributed property this whole page, I'm going to go ahead and do it. But you could just divide by 2 here, divide by 2 here, and get n plus 4 is less than 6. And that'd be fine to solve it from there. But just for distributed practice, we subtract 8 from both sides. We get 2n is less than 4. Divide both sides by 2. We get n is less than 2. Last one, finally. 3 times the sum of a number and 6 is greater than 4 times the number decreased by 2. So I didn't have to do any parentheses on the second half, the right side of the inequality, because it didn't say 4 times the sum or 4 times the difference. It just said 4 times the number. So the 4 only gets applied to the variable. So we need to distribute the 3. And then we have variables on both sides, so I'm going to subtract 3n from both sides. And our last step, we add 2 to both sides and get 20 is greater than n.